Hi, Rio Grande third graders. It's time to check our DMA for our week 13 day 2 problems. So it's Tuesday. So we've got week 13, we're on day 2. We're going to take a look at our equations here. You'll notice they are multiplication equations that are missing a factor. So I'm going to use what we've been talking about recently on division, and I'm going to model this using my dry erase board and talk about how the factors are going to set up my model. So my first problem is 5 groups of blank equals 10. So my total has already been given to me. I know I have a total of 10 objects. But I don't know how many objects are in each group. So based on a model, I could say that I have 5 groups, and I can use bars to show my groups. And if I'm showing my bars, I have 5 bars for my 5 groups. I know that I have 10 objects total. Now, this is where your understanding or your fact fluency comes in, because if we have 10 objects, we want to know how many objects are going to be in each group. So, if I start placing objects into the groups and share them, those 10 objects equally, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So there are my 10 objects, and I forgot to add an S to my objects. And I can say that now I started off with my 5 groups, and now I know that I have 2 objects in each group, and my total objects is going to be 10. Now, this is the same thing as what we've been talking about with division. We know the total number of objects. We're sharing those objects into 5 groups, and we are going to have 2 objects in each group. So basically, we're using our understanding of a missing factor as our quotient for our division fact. So now I can come back to my paper here, and I can say that I have 2 objects in each group. Because that's kind of what our first factor tells us, right? We also know that we can always switch the factors as well, because that's our order property of multiplication. So now let's take the idea of, I'll just flip my dry erase board over, and now I'm going to see that I'm missing my first factor now. I don't know how many groups I have, but I do know that there are 7 objects in each group, and I do know that I have a total here. So, since I have my total, I should be able to count up to, so I'm going to model this, up to 14. So, if I have 7 objects in each group, I have 1, and actually let's do a tally mark. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 6, 7. That's one group of 7 is 7. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And now 7 and 7 is 14, which is, if you notice, my total here for my objects total. Now, I'm looking for my groups. So how many groups of 7 was I able to make when I finished counting my 14 total objects? Well, as you can see here, I had 2 groups. So I can say I have 1 group of 7 and 2 groups of 7, And when I put those together, that gives me my 14 total objects. So now I can come up to my equation here, and I know that I have 2 groups of 7, and 2 groups of 7 is going to give me 14. Same for 9 groups of 3. However, we already have our factors. So here I'm just looking for my product. I have 9 groups of 3 or 3 groups of 9. So I could add 9 plus 9 plus 9 and use repeated addition. Or if you know how to skip count by 9s, 9 and 9 is 18. So we could go 9, 18, and then adding another group of 9 would be 27. So our product for 9 times 3 is going to be 27. 9 groups of 3 is 27, or 3 groups of 9 is 27. We could write a division sentence with this, and just since we've been talking about division, we could take the 27 total objects. We could put them into 3 equal groups, 1, 2, 3 equal groups, and we would get 9 in each group. So this is just showing you how your multiplication and your division are related to each other, especially since we've been talking about it. Now, our next problem has to do with looking at the clock and determining the time or figuring out the time. This one's pretty easy. This one is more closely aligned to a first grade standard, being able to tell time to the hour. So if we look at our minute hand, if we look at our hour hand, let's look at our hour hand first. We always want to look at the shorthand. The shorthand is telling us our hour. So if you notice, our shorthand is telling us it's on the 8 exactly. As the minute hand would continue to go around, that 8 would get closer and closer to the 9. However, since this is pointing directly at the 12, we know it's on an exact hour, which means it's 8 o'clock. Now, what time does Harry have to be at work? Well, more than likely, this is probably going to be a.m. Not to say that people couldn't go to work in the evening, which would be p.m., but it's probably more likely and possibility that it would be a morning work time as opposed to a evening work start time. Let's take a look at our word problem. And actually, I think I'll go to our adding and subtracting problem first. These are second grade skills. We know that we can add 40 and 10, which would be 50. And 5 and 4 is 9. No regrouping necessary, so our 10s are going to stay within the 40 and the 10. We know 40 and 10 is equal to 50, and 4 and 5 is equal to 9. And when we put these together from standard form from expanded form to standard form, we know that we have 59. We have 82, and we're subtracting 3 10s from the 80. Remember, we aren't subtracting any 1, so this should be fairly simple. We have 8 10s. Subtract a 10, that would be 70. Subtract 1 more 10, that would be 60. Subtract 1 more, that would be 50. So our difference is 52. And remember, you can always check your subtraction by using addition. So if I were to take my 52, which was what was left, and add 30 back to it, I should have 82. So let's check. 50 plus 3 10s should be 80, and 2 1s, we don't add any more 1s to that, so that's going to be 82. So it checked out correctly, so we know we've done our subtraction correctly. Our next problem, which is our word problem, says Kayla bought 5 boxes of Ginger Snaps Delights. Each box has 7 cookies. How many Ginger Snap Delights does she have? So we have our 5 boxes, and we have 7 cookies in each box. Now, they want to know how many total cookies do we have. So if we're thinking about finding the total number of cookies, we know that we are going to be using, right, multiplication. So we have our groups, which are the boxes. We have the number of cookies in each box. And we want total cookies. Now, if we were unsure about how to find our total or our product, we could draw ourselves a bar diagram. So I'm going to model this for ourselves, and we're going to show our work here. So I have 5 boxes. And each box contains 7 cookies in each box. So I'm going to put 7 cookies in each box, and I could put a little C next to them to stand for cookies. And I want to know total cookies here. So in order for me to find my total cookies, I would need to use either repeated addition, or if I know my multiples of 7, I could skip count by 7. So 7 and 7 more would be 14, and 7 more to that would be 21. 7 more to 21 would be 28, and finally 7 more would be 35. I could also use repeated addition and add 7 plus 7 is 14, and this 7 plus 7 is 14, and then 14 and 14 is 28, plus another 7 is going to give me the 35 total cookies. We also know that we can switch our factors around. So instead of saying 5 times 7, we could do 7 groups of 5. And if we did 7 groups of 5, we count by 5s, and we would know that that's also 35. So many different ways to think about this, but in the end, we know that we're going to have 35 cookies. Now, I'm going to add a little part to this for our discussion today. So, this is what we're going to be answering in our discussion for today. When we meet for class, my discussion question is going to be, if Kayla added another box of 7 cookies, how could we use the distributive property to solve for the total cookies? Okay, so I'm going to repeat that one more time. If Kayla added another box of cookies, another box of 7 cookies, right? If she added one more box of 7 cookies, how could we use the distributive property to help us solve for the number of cookies? So we'll be discussing that in our discussion today for our class time. That'll be our warm-up for our class time. So can't wait to hear what you guys have to say, and we're going to talk about this. And so hopefully you've been thinking about that distributed property and how to use it. Have a great morning or afternoon, and I will see you during our team meeting.